Yesterday was a defining moment for the left in this country, particularly in regards to electoral politics and this mission that's been going on for the last 4 years to try to elect politicians who don't take corporate money and send them to Congress so that they can challenge the establishment and bring about a political revolution through that way. Yesterday was a very big deal, and it's almost impossible to quantify how big it actually was, how big a moment this was, because you have to get into this abstract conversation about missed opportunities and things that could have been and should have been. But the fact of the matter is, the elected progressives, people who are supposed to be representing the left, people who ran on being revolutionaries and challenging the political establishment, they had the opportunity to shake up that political establishment, to completely change the direction of Congress, to change the direction of this left movement, finally put us on the offense and put us in a position of power. They had a chance to change politics forever because AOC and the rest of the elected Justice Democrats, AOC and her squad, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, they all by themselves undoubtedly had the leverage, they had the power to remove Nancy Pelosi from Speaker of the House, arguably the worst speaker in modern history. They had a chance to remove her and make a very clear set of demands that either the next person that the Democratic Party nominates to be Speaker of the House, either they meet our demands, in this case, the demands of force of vote, or a floor vote on Medicare for all, and they could have added any other thing they wanted, a vote on UBI, committee chair seats, whatever. They could have said, unless you meet our demands, we're going to continue to use our veto power, and there will not be a Speaker of the House until you guys do something for the American people. They could have done that, but they didn't. They chose not to. Instead, they rolled over, they folded for Nancy Pelosi, they folded for the political establishment like they always do, and they all gave up that tremendous amount of leverage and unprecedented power that they had, the veto power that they had in the speaker's race. They gave it up and voted for Nancy Pelosi for nothing. They got nothing serious, they got nothing tangible out of it. This was an unimaginable stroke of luck that they even found themselves in this position to begin with, after Bernie lost the nomination, after Joe Biden, chief architect of neoliberalism and corporatism, is now president-elect and is promising to defend the status quo. After Nancy Pelosi and the rest of Congress shit the bed during the worst emergency in U.S. history. After all that, the left is in despair and seemingly has no political power in this country. We find ourselves in a situation where they literally get to decide they get to decide the terms of who's going to be the next Speaker of the House, and they squandered it. They passed up that opportunity, and I can't imagine them ever getting another opportunity this immense anytime in the near future, maybe in my lifetime. This could have been a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and they squandered it. This was a put up or shut up moment. They had the chance to prove us all wrong and to prove that they aren't in it for themselves and their own career ambitions, that they are actually fighting for people. They had a chance to prove all that, but they didn't. They took the path of least resistance. They sold you out again to stay in the good graces of Nancy Pelosi and the corporate Democrats. And I will personally make it my mission to always remind people of this missed opportunity. But the thing is, that's so frustrating to me. As time goes on, you're even seeing it now. When I rightfully rage against these charlatans, these so-called elected progressives, when I rage against them and say that they're part of the problem, they're going to be people who, as the further we move away in time, we move away from this moment, there are going to be people who don't get the gravity and the importance of this moment. They may not have been paying attention. They may not have known. But they'll see me rage against AOC and Ilhan Omar and the rest of them, and they'll say, hey, you're being divisive and you're going after our allies, and you're focusing all your ire on the wrong people. These are the people who agree with you. What you should really be mad at are the corporate Democrats and the Republicans. Those are who you really should be mad at. But my problem is, and always will be, that when they had the opportunity to kneecap the corporate Democrats and to put them in their place, they didn't do that. So when Nancy Pelosi comes around in this session of Congress and she does like she did back in March of last year during the initial negotiations over the CARES Act, when Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership specifically injected themselves in the negotiations to say that there will be no universal payments, they will be means tested, and it will be a one-time payment. That was Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, it specifically injected themselves in negotiations to make that demand, to make the means tested one-time check. That was them. So when Nancy Pelosi comes around and does the same shit again, this time in this session of Congress, yeah, I'll be mad at her. Yeah, I'll rant and rave about her. But I'm also going to be on fire about the progressives that allowed her to be Speaker of the House. So from now on, the most popular excuse, oh, you can't be mad at Bernie, you can't be mad at AOC, you can't be mad at Ilhan Omar, because even though they have these great policies, they don't control Congress, they don't have the majority, so of course they can't get what they want all the time. Now that excuse means even less than before, because they did have the numbers. Nancy Pelosi could not have been elected Speaker of the House if 6 of them said we're not voting for her, and we're not voting for anybody unless they bring a floor vote on Medicare for all, unless they do this, unless they do that. So they don't have the numbers to make change in Congress excuse, that all went out the window because they had that opportunity. They had an opportunity to completely change the direction of Congress and change the direction and momentum of politics in this country, and they chose not to. They on purpose chose not to for their own career ambitions. So this was, like I said, this was a defining moment, and it's almost impossible to overstate the missed opportunities. The Justice Democrats really undermined the fundamental argument behind why we should even try to elect progressives to take over the Democratic Party. Because the root of that argument is that if we elect enough of these politicians who don't take corporate money and agree to said policy platform like living wage and ending the wars, Medicare for all, now UBI, if we get enough people to agree with those policies into Congress, then when the time comes to have a vote on whatever issue, we have the votes and we have the numbers to force that vote in order to advance such policies. That's the premise behind let's elect more AOCs and Bernie Sanders into the Democratic Party so that they could take over the party. But what they showed yesterday was that even when you get to a dream scenario where they do have the numbers to fight for said policy, they still won't do it. So if they had the numbers to remove Nancy Pelosi and force a floor vote on Medicare for all and force a floor vote on UBI and any number of issues, if they had that opportunity, they clearly had that opportunity yesterday. That is not in dispute. They had that opportunity and they folded. Okay, so then should anybody believe that in 2 election cycles, 3 election cycles, 4 election cycles, whenever, when there is now 50, 60, 70, 80 Justice Democrats in Congress and they can force a vote on Medicare for all or whatever. Now, how am I supposed to try to vote the right way when in this time they could have voted the right way and they didn't? So you're telling me that we should continue to put energy and effort into this strategy that has borne no fruit and produced no results, all in the hopes that at one magical, undefined, unspecified time, there will be a vote and the people who agree with us are going to vote the right way. Well, they didn't this time. They haven't before. So it is delusional at this point to think, oh, but the next time when it really counts and when their votes really matter and they can make a difference, oh, that time they're really going to do it. There's no proof that they're going to do it. In fact, the opposite. They're going to fold and go the other way. Or at least just enough of them are going to fold and go the other way. First, I have a couple things to say. I'm sure none of you know this, but my birthday was 2 days ago. I just turned 24. And I just want to say that I'm grateful I made it another year. I know many can't say that. And it's funny because a lot of people in my family think I am making the biggest mistake of my life doing this show and devoting so much time and energy into this show. As I get older, I do realize, that is a risk. But I'm sure the show will be successful, mainly because of you guys in the audience. Even if it's a risk, I've learned in my life that there's some things that, it's worth taking the risk to do. I love doing this show for you all. I love interacting with you guys. I love talking about these topics. And there's just nothing else that I would rather be doing at this moment, especially this moment, such a defining moment in history and in politics, and where basically everyone in the media shit the bed. I think it's important that I do what I can to chronicle these events and try to be a voice of reason, a voice of sanity to some of the people in my audience who are seeing all this go on and is just shocked by how absolutely nobody has really doing, anybody in a position of power, nobody's really doing anything to fix the dire situation that we're in. I also get the value that it gives people just to hear somebody say that this is not normal, that it isn't your fault that shit is this fucked up, and it doesn't have to be this way, but the people in power choose to let it be this way. I know that it might be a small thing. At least I can give people that. But anyway, it's just me saying I love what I do. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, I'll always be grateful for the audience that I do have. And no matter what, I'm never going to stop speaking truth about it. So you don't have to worry about me going anywhere. But if you do want to make this sustainable, if you do want to help this be my career, you can contribute to the show financially. I have links to my Patreon in the About page of the YouTube channel. If you feel more comfortable doing a one-time contribution, I have a link to PayPal in the About page of the YouTube channel. And the show is also on Odyssey.com. The link for that is also in the About page of the YouTube channel. It's sort of like a YouTube alternative, like a Rofkin, something like that. So you can go follow the channel there and watch videos. I actually get paid when you watch a video on Odyssey. So you go check out videos on the website. And again, like I always say, I'm incredibly grateful for all the people who contribute to the show. Couldn't do this without you. And for all the people who comment and watch the videos and share the videos, incredibly grateful for you guys too. There are many, many, many different angles that need to be talked about in regards to what happened yesterday. And all these elected progressives, every single one of them voting for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House. So many angles to talk about. This first one, I might end up doing an entirely separate video about, because that's how important I think this is by itself. And that is, okay, so what does accountability look like for these elected progressives? And that's a serious question, because there's all this talk about, you can't be too rough on AOC and Unburning because they mean well, they agree with you on policy. It's just their strategy is so incredibly, unbelievably stupid and ineffective and ineffectual that they manage to fail at every single time when we need them to fight the most. But you can't be too mad at them. So for people like that, I ask, what does accountability look like? Because failure is also a disqualifying factor. Failure is enough of a reason to dismiss you from the position you are as an elected leader of the left movement in this country. If you fail to get any policy wins, that by itself should be disqualifying. So if you have all of these defining moments where they did actually have an opportunity to make huge advancements in the policy agenda that they claim to believe in, and every single time they rolled over, they folded for the establishment. If they do it every single time, how do we hold them accountable for that? Because I'll tell you what isn't working. I'll tell you what they're not listening to. They aren't listening to Kyle Kalinske and all these other people trying to tweet what they think Justice Democrats should do and how they should be more aggressive to the establishment. They see all of that and they are ignoring you. They are on purpose not doing that because they don't want to do that. All the tepid criticisms and the all of that is just, those are slaps on the wrist, and it doesn't really mean shit to them, and that's why they keep ignoring it, because there's no consequence. So that's why I ask, where's the accountability? Where's the line? Where is it that we say, you know what? You are unresponsive to the movement. You have terrible strategy and you fail to get any results. So there has to be some price to pay. There has to be some cost to that. And sure, I think challenging them with an actual firebrand lefty in each of their districts, sure, that's an option, but that isn't going to happen for another 2 years. And waiting around for another election cycle, I'm telling you right now, that isn't an option. So for me, the best way to hold them accountable is to treat them like we treat every other establishment politician, or at least how we should be treating every other establishment politician. It should be a no-brainer that the left should just stop donating to them, stop funding politicians who are not fighting for you. I thought we agreed to that when we said stop giving money to corporate Democrats. Stop funding politicians. Stop giving your hard-earned money. Stop giving money you don't have to politicians who aren't fighting for you. That should be the first step in accountability. There should be a pressure campaign to cut funding to these Justice Democrats. Also, we need to up the naming and shaming. We need to rake them over the coals regularly. And like I said, not with some mild, tepid segment saying, hey, I think it was really bad that you do that, so you should do this instead. No, I'm talking about full board, just like you do with any corporate Democrats, and let them have it. No holding back because you think they're your allies, they're your friends, and you don't want to get them mad and you want them to keep listening to you. None of that. Just do them like how you would do any other establishment politician. And when the time comes for direct action and general strikes and protests, people should be outside of their offices too, outside of their homes too. They need to feel the pressure just like all the other establishment politicians. I think at this moment, the left needs to have a conversation about where the line is and when do these quote elected progressives, when do they go from being progressives, so-called leftists, to just typical regular status quo defending, incrementalism pushing establishment politician. Now, I'm not saying they're corporate Democrats because they don't technically take corporate money. Okay, we can make that distinction. But as far as their actions in Congress, they are like I said, an establishment politician. They aren't there rocking the boat. They're there just to go along to get along. And in doing so, you're agreeing to the status quo. So what's the status quo? The establishment. Like I said, you have all these defining moments where they really get to show their grit and whether or not they mean what they say, and it could really shake up things and advance the agenda that they claim to believe in, but they fold every fucking time. They did it in the primary. Bernie folded during in the middle of the primary. He didn't have to drop out. And in fact, he could have come back from behind and tore Joe Biden to shreds even after Obama interfered and had all the other candidates drop out and endorse Joe Biden. Bernie still could have tore him to shreds because ultimately, not even half of the primary states voted when Bernie threw the towel in. And we were in an unprecedented scenario where he could have come back from behind simply by pointing out that Joe Biden is so corrupt and in the pocket of big pharma and for-profit private health insurance companies that he keeps saying he will block you from getting healthcare in a pandemic. He would veto Medicare for all if it miraculously passed Congress and landed on his desk. He will veto it and deny you healthcare for his donors. Bernie could have did that. He could have made that case city to city, state to state. And you think that couldn't have got people to look at Joe Biden different? You think that that wouldn't radically increase Bernie's support in the middle of a pandemic in the primary? Yes, that would have. And he could have ended up being the nominee. He didn't. He folded. After that, the CARES Act in March, the progressives could have held up that bill and made up a public pressure campaign to demand that fuck trying to get in some provisions into that shitty corporate scam, that corporate heist CARES Act. They could have said, fuck, we're not doing any of that until we pass clean bills on UBI, Medicare for all, and rent and mortgage cancellation. Until we bail out the people. They could have done that back in the CARES Act, but they didn't. They rolled over, they folded, and they got absolutely nothing. They didn't even get the unemployment insurance, and they didn't even get you that one-time $1,200 check. Those were provisions written by corporate Democrats and Republicans. Those provisions were the cheese in the trap to get the American people to look the other way while they ran out the back door with all the money for the rich. It was the shock doctrine in real time. Naomi Klein's shock doctrine in real time. And progressives had an opportunity to fight back against it and to counter with a people's bailout, and they didn't. And for 9 months since, we've been in an economic freefall, economic calamity, and they could have avoided it. Shilling for Joe Biden, chief architect of neoliberalism and corporatism in the Democratic Party. Been on the wrong side of every major policy issue in his career for the last 40, 50 years in politics. They didn't have to go across the country pretending like Joe Biden was going to be fucking FDR, but they did it anyway. They folded and they rolled over for the establishment, and they did it anyway. They lied to you for the establishment. And then you have this opportunity with Nancy Pelosi. You could remove Nancy Pelosi from the Speaker of the House. You have veto power. You could demand votes on anything you want. You can demand committee chairs, because you know what? At the end of the day, they could not have seated a Speaker of the House. There would be no Speaker of the House until those demands were met. Until AOC and the 5 other Justice Democrats, 6 other Justice Democrats said, all right, I agreed to this, and I'll vote for person XYZ to be Speaker of the House. They had that opportunity. They could have dealt a major blow to the corporate Democrats' leadership. They could have sparked direct action across the country on this specific issue of Medicare for all and providing people healthcare in the middle of a pandemic. Imagine what that fight could have been like. There's going to be a vote on it, a floor vote on it, and every single corporate Democrat is going to have to come out and explain to their constituents why they're going to deny you health care in the middle of a pandemic just so that the donors can make a profit off of you. They would have to do that. And whether or not that vote passed, I'll tell you this. Jimmy Dore made this comparison on his show one time, and I think that's an apt comparison. And that's a thing where with a missed opportunity like that, it's hard to even get out of the abstract and put in concrete terms what could have been. But Jimmy explained that this moment where they'd have to come out and all defend fucking over their constituents for their donors, something like that in the middle of a pandemic and the worst economic crisis in history, would have sparked protest similar to what happened when we all saw George Floyd be murdered on camera. It was just a spark for a giant movement that no one could have seen coming. I very much believe that could have happened if there was a national debate and a floor vote on Medicare for all, much less UBI and anything else that they could have demanded. But they didn't do that. They let that opportunity, that another once in a lifetime opportunity, go by with getting absolutely nothing. So again, where's the accountability? Where's the line? Where do we say, you know what? I don't think you are my ally. I don't think you're much better than establishment Democrats, because tweets don't mean shit. You can tweet anything you want. You can tweet Medicare for all is great all you want. You can tweet, hey, give people UBI all you want. But if your actions are never advancing that policy goal, then that is literally just lip service. You are literally just riding the wave of popular policies, and you don't even have to do any of the hard work to try to implement those policies, and you still get all this credit and praise from the left. So there really needs to be a conversation about accountability, because this is unacceptable. And I don't mean, oh, let's talk about them for a day and then, oh, everything's fine after this. No, like, there seriously needs to be organizing and strategizing to make them pay a price for what they did yesterday. But yesterday, it wasn't a shock to me, and let me be clear about that. It wasn't a surprise to me. They didn't catch me off guard. I very much expected every single one of them to vote for Nancy Pelosi. It just solidifies and it crystallized the position that I've evolved to over the last few months, which is electoral politics is dead, at the very least in the short term. And if we're going to give people the assistance that they need to survive the worst emergency in U.S. history, the only option is direct action. That is the only option. People need to be in the streets. People need to make these politicians uncomfortable. They need to feel the pressure. Business as usual cannot continue, and they have to be afraid that if they cross us and if they don't give us what we're demanding, because they work for us, they have to be afraid that there's going to be a consequence. And right now, these elected progressives, they fear no consequences. That's why they fold and they roll over every single time, because they only fear consequences from Nancy Pelosi, from being on the bad side of Nancy Pelosi in Democratic leadership. With us, they don't fear that, because you have all these sycophants and these people defending them and telling us, oh, they mean well and they're our ally. No matter what they do, no matter how bad they sell us out, they're still our ally. So they don't feel any pressure from the left. They don't feel like they have to deliver or else there are going to be consequences. They don't feel that. So that is led them to this careerist, opportunistic path that they're on, where they think that, oh, if nobody on my left is going to really, if I don't really have to take slings and arrows from my left for pushing the incrementalism that the establishment wants me to do, then I can just do that and advance my career, and I'll still have all the support from the left. So they view this as a win-win for them, and they cannot view it like that. They have to view it as it's an either or. We have to pick a side, because that's what it is. And but yeah, direct action, and I'll do more videos about that separately. But I'm still having a hard time trying to put into words how monumental this missed opportunity was to remove Nancy Pelosi and advance an actual left agenda through the House of Representatives.